Welcome to the brownstone, where logic triumphs and tempers occasionally flare. Tell us where in the world you're listening. Wolfe may never leave home, but his stories travel well. Subscribe for more mysteries with Nero Wolfe and Archie Goodwin. Every good mystery deserves good company, and a little gratitude between cases. A warm thank you to Norma, our newest patron. Your support keeps the orchids blooming and the mysteries alive. Join the circle of mystery lovers on Patreon. Link in description. Nero Wolfe and the case. Fritz carried to Paris. The morning started the way most good intentions die, under protest. At 9:30, Wolfe was lecturing me on the barbarity of punctuality, which he called a vice of the unimaginative. I was explaining that clients with money usually preferred it to imagination when the doorbell sounded 3 times in a hurry. Fritz doesn't ring bells unless the stove's on fire, so I knew it wasn't a visit from the milkman or the taxman. A moment later he appeared in the office doorway, pale as the foam on his own hollandaise. His white jacket was buttoned wrong, which for Fritz was the equivalent of me showing up to work in a toga. He held a yellow envelope at arm's length like it might explode. Wolfe looked up from the Times, eyebrows twitching. "Fritz, you appear unwell." "Sir," Fritz said, his accent thicker than gravy, "this came for me, but it is not right." He crossed the rug with the solemnity of a man approaching confession. When he handed me the envelope, I caught a whiff of something fancy, truffle oil and panic. The telegram was stamped New York, not Paris, and the paper was the thick continental kind. My high school French isn't something I brag about, but I can make it past a menu. I read enough to see the words Henri Durand, mort and poison. "When a man gets a telegram that makes him paler than his own hollandaise," I said, "you know it's not a dinner invitation." "Read it properly," Wolfe ordered. I obliged. "Monsieur Brenner," that's you, Fritz, "your former employer, Chef Henri Durand, dead by sauce espagnole. Police say poison, your recipe. Help me prove innocence. Simone Durand for Anna." Fritz let out a small noise, half gasp, half groan. "Anna Durand," he whispered. "Mon Dieu, I knew she would write, but not for this." Wolfe held out a hand. "Archie, the telegram." He studied it as though it were a rare orchid in distress, sniffed, frowned. "Truffle essence, French ink, yet posted here. Curious." "Maybe the post office started serving cordon bleu," I said. He ignored me, which meant he'd already filed my wisecrack under irrelevant but mildly tolerable. "Explain yourself, Fritz." Fritz swallowed. "Before the war, I worked at Le Sabot d'Or in Paris. Chef Durand was my master. I created for him a sauce, a little thing with Madeira and shallots. He said it would make his name. Then I came to America. He wrote me sometimes. But this," his voice cracked. Wolfe leaned back, interlaced his fingers across the equator of his waistline. "You are accused by implication. Poisoned sauce. Your creation. How did this come to you from New York, not France?" "I do not know. Perhaps Madame Anna, his sister, has friends here. But Mr. Wolfe, it is a lie. That sauce never could it kill," I said, "unless the cook hated the customer." Fritz shot me a wounded look. "Mr. Goodwin, please." "Archie," Wolfe murmured, "refrain from flippancy when the kitchen bleeds. Fritz, sit." He pointed to the red leather chair usually reserved for clients with retainers, not frying pans. Fritz sank into it, wringing his hands like dish rags. "Your distress is evident," Wolfe said. "You will compose yourself. Panic befuddles accuracy. What precisely do you know of this Anna Durand?" "She was kind but proud. She managed the books. She loved her brother. I have not heard from her since 1938. She would never accuse me, unless someone frightened her." "Pfui," Wolfe said softly. "Fear breeds folly. Archie, note the hour." I checked my watch. 9:42. "Orchid time, boss." He glared. "You think I would abandon Fritz to petal inspection?" He pulled the bell cord. Fritz jumped like it was a noose. "Coffee, Fritz. Strong. Then you will rest." "But Mr. Wolfe—" "Sir," Wolfe corrected, "I will consider this matter during the interval of caffeine. Afterward we shall determine whether you are to be ruined or rescued." When Fritz left, his footsteps faded toward the kitchen like retreating guilt. Wolfe sat silent long enough for me to hear the radiator sigh. "So," I said, We've got one frightened chef, one poisoned Frenchman, and a telegram that thinks it came by way of Broadway. You want I should send condolences or reservations?" He half closed his eyes. "Insolence, Archie, is not wit. The question is authenticity. If this message originated in New York, the sender is here. That alters its gravity." "Meaning someone wants Fritz to panic locally." "Precisely. And he has obliged." Wolfe exhaled through his nose, which for him was emotional fireworks. "You will verify the telegram's provenance." "Through Lon Cohen?" "Indeed. The Gazette has fingers in all clerical pies. If it is genuine, we face an appeal for help. If counterfeit, a trap." I said, "And if it's both?" "Then, my impertinent friend, we face humanity." He reached for the desk beer he wasn't supposed to have before noon. I raised an eyebrow. "You're breaking your own rule." "Bah, the hour advances." He poured, waited for the chill fog to settle on the glass. Fritz's anguish is infectious. Beer is the proper inoculation. I leaned back in my chair. "You want me to dig quietly or stir the stew?" "Moderately," he said. "Begin with the telegraph office. Obtain the sending clerk's recollection. Mention my name if stupidity obstructs you. Then, if necessary, Mr. Cohen." "Got it. Anything else?" "Yes. Cease attempting humour until after lunch." I grinned. "That's cruel and unusual punishment." He ignored me again, which was his version of affection. At 10:30, I was out in the chill wind of West 35th Street. The city smelled of rain and exhaust, Manhattan's answer to truffle oil. The telegraph office clerk turned out to be a thin woman with the expression of someone allergic to laughter. She checked her records, tapping keys with bureaucratic rhythm. "Yes, that message was sent last night," she said. "Paid cash." The man spoke French, older, grey hair, limp. "Did he give a name?" She shook her head. "He said it was personal and urgent. He left in a taxi heading downtown." "Nice and vague. You sure it wasn't a stage rehearsal?" She didn't smile. I thanked her anyway and made a mental note to bring Lon Cohen a croissant when I hit the Gazette. Lon was at his desk, chewing a pencil. "Telegram from a French dame with perfume ink?" "Yeah. Western Union flagged it. It was routed through a consulate pouch first. Whoever sent it had diplomatic privileges." "Meaning it could be genuine," I said, "or someone using fancy connections to make it look that way. Why?" "Fritz got it. Name rings a bell." "Durand? The chef who did that dinner for the French ambassador last week. He's dead. Poisoning, rumour says." "So the rumour's real." Lon shrugged. "Papers got it under wraps till confirmation. You want me to hold it?" "Hold it, print it, or eat it. Just don't put Wolfe's name in yet. He likes to appear after the soup, not before." Lon laughed. "Tell him the Gazette's appetite waits for nobody." When I got back to the brownstone, the clock was striking noon, and Fritz's lunch aroma was working overtime. Veal stock, parsley, and anxiety. Wolfe was in his chair reading a German monograph on fungus. He looked up. "Well?" "Real enough," I said, handing him my notes. "Sent through the consulate, paid cash by a grey Frenchman with a limp. Durand's death's already rumour fodder. The Gazette's sharpening knives." Wolfe read, nodded once. "Then Fritz's past has come to dine uninvited. Maybe it just wants dessert." He gave me the stare usually reserved for people who misquote Montaigne. "Archie, frivolity dulls discernment. You will prepare a report. Brevity preferable to brilliance." I sat at the typewriter. "I'll try to disappoint on both counts." As I hammered the keys, Fritz entered with the lunch tray. Veal cutlets, asparagus, and a tremor. He set the plates down carefully, eyes avoiding ours. "Mr. Wolfe, I cannot eat." Wolfe gestured imperiously. "You will. Appetite is faith in survival." "I have no appetite, sir." "Then borrow mine." That earned a weak smile. Fritz poured his own coffee, hands steadying by habit, if not by peace. I said, "You didn't tell us everything, Fritz. That telegram. Anna asked you to help prove her innocence, not yours." He froze. Wolfe's eyes gleamed. "Indeed." I observed the pronoun. "So, Archie, the guilt's assumption shifts." "Maybe Anna's the cook with motive," I said. "Family feud, inheritance, chef's knife in the will." "Perhaps," Wolfe murmured. "Or she is bait. Either way, we must respond." He took a slow sip of beer. "Fritz, you are to remain in the house. You will answer no questions, grant no interviews. Mr. Goodwin will handle all external communication. Do you comprehend?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Courage, my friend. Culinary genius seldom escapes persecution." When Fritz had gone, I asked, "You buying his innocence wholesale?" "I do not buy," Wolfe said. "I discern. Fritz's loyalty is adamantine, but truth may yet possess alloy." "Meaning?" "Meaning," he said, closing his eyes. "We dine at 1. Afterward you will telephone Mr. Cohen again. By then he may have news. Until then, silence." I leaned back. "Silence, sure. But if another telegram walks in smelling like garlic, I'm sending it straight to the kitchen." He almost smiled. "Do so. And Archie?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for tempering levity with diligence." Coming from Wolfe, that was a sonnet. He rang for Fritz, the signal that lunch and conversation were officially over. As the silver covers lifted and steam rose, I thought about the telegram folded in Wolfe's drawer, still faintly perfumed with truffle oil and trouble. Whatever kitchen cooked that message, it wasn't done serving courses yet. By 10:30 the next morning, I was out on West 35th Street, wishing that murder cases came with travel stipends. Wolfe had planted me a mission: verify the telegram's genesis, observe, infer, report, which, in my language, translated to go find the facts while I protect the upholstery. The French consulate stood on a quiet midtown block where even the pigeons seemed to have passports. The flag out front drooped like a tired tricolour in the muggy air, and a brass plaque informed me that entry was by appointment only. I had no appointment, but I had my face, an all-American credential when paired with Wolfe's business card. Inside, the lobby smelled of polished wood and imported arrogance. A uniformed clerk with the moustache of a minor musketeer asked my purpose. I told him, "I'm tracing a telegram sent yesterday through your diplomatic pouch." He gave me the look reserved for uncultured colonials, then vanished behind a carved door. 5 minutes later, she appeared. Simone Durand wasn't the type to arrive unnoticed. She moved like the pause before a piece of music, poised and deliberate. Dark hair, neat as precision, a simple navy suit that probably cost more than my car, and eyes that could sharpen a knife without touching it. "Monsieur Goodwin," she said, accent landing lightly on every syllable. "I'm told you are investigating my uncle's death." "That depends who's asking," I said. "If you're with the police, I'm sightseeing. If you're not, I'm working." Her mouth curved faintly. "I am his niece, Simone Durand. And you are with Monsieur Wolfe, yes? The famous detective who never leaves his chair." "Chair, orchid room, dining room. He's got a rotation," I said. "You sent that telegram to our friend Fritz." "I signed it in Anna's name," she said. "I needed your attention, and her name compels it." She held out a thin envelope. This was with it. Inside was a single notebook page, the handwriting slanted and elegant. At the top, Source Espagnole, revision, underlined twice. Beneath it, a sketch of a copper pot with a crossmark inside. "He wrote this 2 days before he died," she said. "He mentioned the American chef who knew the secret. That must be Monsieur Brenner, your Fritz. I found the paper among his things." I studied the drawing. The cross wasn't random. It marked the spot inside the pot, not on it. A clue, maybe, or a chef's morbid doodle. "Your uncle," I said, "wasn't exactly popular, was he?" She didn't flinch. "He had rivals. In cuisine, ambition is sharper than knives. But he was a great man. Someone wanted his name ruined." "By using a recipe Fritz invented." She nodded. "To destroy both, a double tragedy. That is why I contacted you." I'll say this for the French. They can turn disaster into dialogue. "Miss Durand," I said, "I've met panicky heirs and grieving nieces, but you don't fit either mould. You look like a woman with a plan." Her eyes cooled. "Perhaps. My plan is to survive. My uncle's restaurant was his life, but his death makes me a suspect. I cannot go to the police. They will call it family vengeance. I must prove otherwise." "And you think someone in New York killed him?" She hesitated just long enough to matter. "He was here 2 weeks ago, negotiating a new contract. Someone followed him back to Paris, or sent poison with him. Either way, the origin is here." It made a kind of sense, though the kind that comes gift-wrapped for trouble. Fine, I said. I'll pass it along. Wolfe will think about it while I do the running. You ever met him? No, but I have read of him. They say he despises lies. Only the ones he can't dissect. Thanks for the notebook. As I stood, she said, Monsieur Goodwin, be careful. Whoever killed my uncle will kill again. I grinned. If they're aiming for me, they'll have to shoot through Wolfe's ego first. Outside, the air felt thicker. I folded the page carefully and headed for a cab. For all I knew, the cross in the pot was a cook's secret for flavour balance, but it also looked like an X on a map, and maps usually led to something buried. By the time I hit the brownstone, it was 1:05, which meant I was late enough to qualify for a scolding and early enough to interrupt lunch. Wolfe sat at the table, napkin precise, knife poised over veal. Fritz hovered nearby, pale but functional. You are tardy, Wolfe said. Traffic boss, the French invented delays. I handed him the notebook page. From Simone Durand, niece of the deceased. She's got poise, brains, and a sense of style that could make homicide look like haute couture. He grunted. Describe her later, the document first. He adjusted his glasses, peered at the paper. This cross, inside the pot. Maybe a cook's note, I said, or a bullseye. Or, Wolfe murmured, a symbol that what appeared within the pot, the sauce, was not the carrier of death. Intriguing. Fritz made a strangled sound. Monsieur, I swear on my honour. Be still, Wolfe said. Your innocence I accept provisionally. Your composure I require immediately. Fritz subsided. I poured myself coffee to fill the silence. She says Durand had enemies, I told him. Culinary and contractual. He'd been in New York before he died. Seems like our poison took the scenic route across the Atlantic. Indeed. Wolfe put down his fork, which was serious. The man didn't abandon a meal lightly. A death by poison in a sauce attributed to my chef. Intolerable. Yet personal entanglement clouds judgment. Then don't judge, I said. Investigate. He sighed. Archie, there are times your impudence carries a perverse logic. But consider, if I accept, it will not be for remuneration. I smirked. Fritz doesn't look like he's got cash for a retainer anyway. Fritz's eyes filled. Mr. Goodwin, please. Easy, I said. Kidding's my native language. Wolfe dabbed his mouth with his napkin. Fritz, you have served me for years. You are indispensable. That one stopped even me. Wolfe rarely handed out adjectives that kind. He continued, voice low and deliberate. Therefore we proceed, but only symbolically. Meaning? I asked. He reached into his pocket, withdrew a coin and set it on the table, a gleaming franc. This shall be the retainer. Sentiment, not commerce. Fritz blinked back tears. Merci, monsieur. Bah, gratitude is wasted when I'm merely consistent. He turned to me. Archie, you will send Miss Durand a note acknowledging our engagement. Also, discreetly contact Mr. Cohen for background on Durand's recent visit. We require names of associates, creditors, and critics. Got it. Want me to ask Kramer too? Not yet. Until this matter matures beyond the kitchen, we cook alone. Fritz winced at the word cook. I said, one thing puzzles me. The telegram was from New York. Simone says she sent it, but she's no forger. Someone could have duplicated her wording. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Precisely why we must determine its transmission. Did she confirm the office? Yes, the consulate. She works there. Then either she lies or someone inside exploited her trust. Both alternatives are unpleasant. Which do you prefer? Neither. Both stink of complication. I leaned back. You sure you're up for a case that involves feelings? Feelings, Wolfe declared, are merely the gravy of reason, sometimes rich, sometimes burned. Now, if you have finished baiting me, we shall proceed rationally. He rang the bell. Fritz appeared instantly, trained reflex. Coffee, Wolfe said. Strong. And your composure, if you please. Fritz left. Wolfe faced me again. Your observations of Miss Durand, elaborate, I shrugged. Intelligent, guarded. Talks like she's fencing, each word a feint. She could be hiding fear or ambition. Maybe both. Did she show grief? The kind you wear like perfume, light but noticeable. Ah, and what of her warning? She said whoever killed her uncle will kill again. He nodded. Trite, but often true. You find her credible? I'd buy her sincerity before I'd buy her story. That, Archie, is almost wisdom. He studied the notebook page again. A cross within a pot, the mark of exclusion. Perhaps Durand discovered the poison's locus was external, added after preparation. If so, the crime lies with the server, not the cook. Meaning Fritz's sauce was clean. For now. Then what's next? Next, we confirm Durand's movements. You will accompany Mr. Panzer this afternoon to the Cercle Gourmand Club. Its president, Armand Piquet, will remember Durand. Inquire with tact. You mean without my usual charm? I mean with less of it. Fritz returned with the tray. The rich smell of coffee filled the room like amnesty. Wolfe took his cup, sipped, and let the warmth settle. Fritz, he said quietly, we shall restore your name, but you must have faith and patience. Fritz bowed slightly. I will obey, sir. When he had gone, Wolfe's eyes drifted toward the orchid schedule pinned above the desk. At 4, the Phalaenopsis require misting. Between now and then, we will chart Durand's American acquaintances. Begin a list. I pulled a notepad. Got it. 1 poisoned Frenchman, 1 nervous niece, 1 cross-eyed pot, and 1 genius with indigestion. Archie. Yeah? Restrain levity. This is delicate. Sure, but a little levity keeps the gravy from burning. He almost smiled again, the rare currency of approval. By 2 o'clock, Wolfe had dictated 3 notes, torn up 2, and settled on 1 phrased like a royal decree. The case, he said, required cultural tact and culinary insight, both of which he considered in short supply outside his brownstone. I typed the note, addressed it to Simone Durand, and read it aloud. Madame, your appeal has reached us. Circumstances demand scrutiny. Rest assured that Mr. Brenner's integrity shall be vindicated through evidence, not conjecture. Nero Wolfe. Wolfe approved with a grunt. As I sealed the envelope, I couldn't help saying, if I'd known murder could be so well dressed, I'd have bought a tux. He gave me a look that could curdle cream. You will require neither tuxedo nor irony, merely competence. Then I'll disappoint you by being both. He waved me off. Enough. Deliver the letter, then prepare Mr. Panzer for tomorrow night's inquiry. Afterward, return. Meaning? I withhold speculation until I can confirm it. I prefer facts to theatrics. Kramer looked at him long enough to make me think maybe he was reconsidering a decade of shouting matches. Finally he rose, wiping his hands on a napkin. All right, Wolfe, I'll wait for your report. That, Wolfe said gravely, is the first rational statement you've made today. Kramer barked a short laugh. Don't let it go to your head. He nodded to me on the way out. Goodwin. Inspector. I started toward my desk. In the meantime, what's for dessert? Silence, he said, and reached for his book. That was my cue. I went to type up the report, the cable still warm in my pocket and the city outside buzzing with reporters who thought they knew everything. They didn't. Not yet. If there's a wrong way to start a morning, it's by finding a corpse before coffee. By 9 o'clock, Saul and I were standing in the dim hallway of the Hotel Marceau, staring at the door of room 814. The clerk downstairs had said the guest, Victor Lafont, hadn't answered his wake-up call. Given the week's luck, I didn't expect to find him brushing his teeth. Saul glanced at me. You sure you want to go first? I'm not sure I want to go at all, I said, but if the door's locked, that's your department. He produced a thin pick set and went to work. The lock gave way with a soft click. When I pushed the door open, the smell hit us first. Chemical sweetness cut with something foul, like rotting flowers under varnish. Inside, the curtains were half drawn, letting in a streak of sunlight that fell across a toppled chair, an overturned bottle, and a man sprawled face down beside the bed. The carpet beneath him was dark with a spreading stain. Saul crouched. Dead. I nodded. The only thing genuine about this scene is the smell. The rest was theatre. A revolver placed neatly by his right hand, a note half-burned in the ashtray, and truffle oil spilled in an artistic puddle that would have made a food critic weep. The bottle's label read Epicure Imports. Staged, Saul said. He didn't shoot himself. No, I said. He died trying to sell the wrong man fake flavour. Saul moved to the nightstand. You see this? He pointed to a fresh hotel notepad. The top sheet bore faint impressions from a page that had been torn away. I shaded it with my pencil. 2 words appeared. Shipment arrived. Sounds like business before pleasure, I said. The police arrived within 15 minutes, led by Kramer himself, his hat pulled low and cigar clenched like he wanted to strangle it. "Well, Goodwin," he growled, "you really should charge rent at these crime scenes." "Don't look at me," I said. "Saul and I just came for breakfast in bed." He grunted, stepped inside and surveyed the room. "You touch anything?" "Only the door." Kramer's eyes swept to Saul, who gave his trademark deadpan. "I'm just window dressing, Inspector." The medical examiner arrived, a thin man with horn-rimmed glasses and no visible patience. "Poison," he said after one look. "Fast-acting. Same alkaloid as before." Kramer turned to me. "You and Wolfe started this mess. Now it's your turn to clean it up." "Don't tempt me," I said. "Housekeeping's not in my contract." He jabbed his cigar at the bottle on the floor. "That's the same make the papers are screaming about, isn't it?" "Looks like it," I said. "But Wolfe will want proof before you hang it on his chef." "Then tell him to get it quick," Kramer snapped. "The DA's already sharpening his knife." Back at the brownstone, the smell of Fritz's coffee could have raised the dead. Unfortunately, the one who needed raising was already beyond help. I gave Wolfe the rundown, every detail from the staged suicide to the oil-stained carpet. He listened, expression unreadable, hands steepled. When I mentioned the misprint on the bottle's label, his eyes narrowed. "Describe it." Tiny lettering at the bottom. Instead of "Product of France" beer, it reads "Prodcut," a printing error. Wolfe's lids lowered in thought. Prodcut. A simple inversion, but one that betrays its origin. No French bottler would release such an atrocity. American, then. Of course. Our forgers lack both patience and spelling. He gestured toward the microscope on his desk. "The photos you took enlarge the label." I spread the prints. Wolfe examined them under the lens, murmuring, "Inferior paper stock, American ink, manufactured here, distributed under a French guise, Epicure imports again." "That company's running out of clean linen," I said. Wolfe leaned back. "Lafont's death benefits them. A loose thread excised, they staged suicide to bury evidence. And the truffle oil spilled like a calling card." "Precisely. A grotesque signature." He reached for the bell cord. Fritz entered, pale as custard, his apron immaculate but his eyes haunted. "Sir?" "Fritz," Wolfe said gently, "another man has died. The poison was found again in truffle oil, bearing the same label as yours." Fritz's face crumpled. "Then it is my fault. I should have destroyed it all." "Nonsense," Wolfe said sharply. "Responsibility lies with those who corrupted your creation, not with the craftsman whose recipe they defiled." Fritz shook his head. "The police will not see it so." "They will see what I show them," Wolfe said. "You will remain here. You will cook dinner as usual." Fritz hesitated. "Sir, perhaps I should leave the city, at least until—" "You will not," Wolfe's voice cracked through the room like a whip. Then quieter. "Running is only a louder kind of admission. You are innocent. You will stay." Fritz bowed his head, murmured, "Yes, sir," and left. I said, "That was almost fatherly." Wolfe sighed. "It was necessary. The man's spirit is more fragile than egg foam." At 2:00, the brownstone became a revolving door for uniforms. Kramer arrived first, his coat dusted with rain and his patience gone. "I suppose you've heard," he said. "I have," Wolfe replied. "Please, Inspector, be seated." "I'll stand," Kramer said. "We found more bottles in Lafont's room, all stamped Epicure imports. If your theory's right, someone here in New York's been bottling poison and shipping it under Durand's name." "Correct." "Then start naming names." "Not yet," Wolfe said. "The pattern's incomplete." "Tell that to the DA," Kramer barked. "He wants an arrest before the papers start printing headlines about gourmet death rings." Wolfe's brows arched. "Then the DA should read slower." Kramer's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. "Look, Wolfe, I don't enjoy this any more than you do. But another body makes this my case again. I'm bringing in Simone Durand for questioning." "She is not your killer." "Maybe not," Kramer said, "but she's tangled in it up to her pearls." Wolfe's voice hardened. "Treat her carefully, Inspector. She is guilty of naivete, not malice." Kramer took out his cigar, unlit. "You vouching for her?" I vouch for no one, Wolfe said. I simply dislike wasted time. The room went quiet. Finally, Kramer sighed and dropped into the red chair opposite Wolfe. Fine. What do you got? Wolfe turned the microscope toward him. Observe. The label on this bottle is counterfeit. The misprint, prod cut, proves it. The factory that produced it operates under a New Jersey import license. Epicure's domestic partner. You can verify that. Kramer leaned in. So Lafont wasn't importing, he was manufacturing the stuff. Precisely, Wolfe said. When Durand discovered the fraud, he confronted them. They silenced him. Piquet knew enough to threaten exposure, so he too was eliminated. Lafont became expendable once he served his purpose. And Miss Durand? A pawn, Wolfe said. Her inheritance funded the operation unknowingly. When she balked, they blackmailed her to maintain control. Kramer's expression softened slightly. That fits what we found in Lafont's ledger. Good, Wolfe said. Then we are aligned. Kramer smirked. Don't sound so thrilled. I still need an arrest, not alignment. Patience, Inspector. The guilty will soon show their hand. Kramer rose, replaced his hat, and nodded once. All right, Wolfe. I'll wait for your report. As he left, Wolfe muttered, a blunt instrument, but steady. I said, You've got a soft spot for him. He is not corrupt, Wolfe said. That is increasingly rare. The rest of the afternoon passed in paperwork and silence. I typed reports, labelled photos, and tried to ignore the creeping unease that hung over the office like leftover smoke. At 7:30, the scent of veal and cream sauce floated in from the dining room. Fritz was cooking, mechanically, but cooking. When the dinner bell rang, Wolfe didn't move. He was still staring at the microscope slide, eyes narrowed. Archie, he said finally, observe this label. I leaned in. Yeah? The ink here, he said, contains microfibers identical to those used in American currency. Our poisoner did not merely counterfeit food, he counterfeited trust. That is more dangerous. You planning to write a sermon or an indictment? He gave me a rare half-smile. Both, perhaps. The front bell rang again. Fritz's steps echoed, followed by a familiar gruff voice. Kramer, round 2. He entered, cigar lit this time, face lined with fatigue. Lafont's death's confirmed as poisoning. The DA's off my back, for now. Progress, Wolfe said. Have you traced the bottler? Yeah. Small warehouse in Hoboken. Belongs to Epicure's US branch. We raided it. Found printing plates for the fake labels. Someone tipped them off. Place was stripped clean an hour before we got there. Efficient, Wolfe murmured. The rats scurry before the broom. Kramer looked at him. I'll say this much. You called it. But you've still got to prove who's running the show. I shall, Wolfe said. Once I've gathered what remains of their arrogance. Kramer frowned. Whatever that means. It means, Wolfe said, you should prepare an arrest warrant for someone not yet suspected. Kramer barked a dry laugh. You're enjoying this. Hardly. My digestion suffers whenever truth hides behind incompetence. He rose, slowly, deliberately, and reached for his beer. Mr. Goodwin, he said, you risked your life for these photographs. You test my digestion more than any poison. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me, I replied. Don't be impertinent. It confuses sentiment with sense. Kramer groaned. If you two are done flirting with philosophy, I've got paperwork. He jammed the cigar back between his teeth and headed for the door. Call me when you've got a name. When the door closed, I looked at Wolfe. You do have a name, don't you? He stared at the dark window. Not yet, but the pattern's almost complete. Our counterfeiter's perfection will betray them. The broken bottle is never the last. Meaning? Meaning, Archie, that when deceit is crafted too carefully, it leaves fingerprints on the soul. Now go. Fritz waits. I rose. I'll tell him you're coming. No, Wolfe said, eyes still distant. Tell him to keep my plate warm. This evening requires thought more than appetite, I grinned. Then I'll eat your portion. Someone has to uphold morale. He didn't look up, but the corner of his mouth twitched. Archie, your humour is barbaric, but timely. Go. I went. Outside, the city buzzed under drizzle, the streetlights glowing like guilty eyes. Another corpse, another question. Somewhere out there, the last piece of this poisoned puzzle was waiting to be served. Cold. By 11 that morning, I had spent 2 hours staring at a notebook that looked like the love child of a chef's journal and a banker's nightmare. Henri Durand's handwriting meandered like a source reduction. Starts bold, ends indecipherable. If the man had meant to hide his secrets, he'd done a gourmet job. The book lay open on Wolfe's desk, its pages covered with recipes written in French and annotated with curious initials. At first glance, it was nothing more than culinary nostalgia. But after 3 cups of coffee and 1 remark too many from Wolfe about my analytical limitations, I noticed something that didn't smell like time. "Look here," I said, tapping the entry for sauce espagnole. "You see these initials next to each ingredient? FL, EI, AD. They're not cooks, they're payees, flour, lard, and lies." Wolfe raised an eyebrow, always his version of applause. "Proceed, if you can manage coherence." "Every recipe has a pattern," I said. "Take velouté. Each ingredient's initial matches someone we've run across. Lafont, Durand, Epicure Imports. The quantities correspond to payments. 1/2 cup, 500,000. He leaned forward. "So, Durand's recipes conceal his financial ledgers. He wrote in code, using cuisine as camouflage." "Exactly. He cooked his books, literally." Wolfe exhaled deeply, hands folding across his vest. "Archie, your capacity for vulgar idiom offends precision, but not accuracy. Excellent." "Why, thank you," I said. "I'll embroider that on a towel." He ignored me, his voice taking on that cathedral resonance that meant the case was about to click. "Espagnole, the base sauce, the foundation of flavour, and of fraud. The transactions concealed here trace directly to Epicure Imports. Each entry mirrors their export manifests. The code reveals a steady siphoning of profits." "By who?" Wolfe's eyes glinted. "By the only man with both access and appetite, Miles Farnham, president of Epicure Imports." "The big boss himself," I said, "and he's been playing dumb while Kramer chews on the crumbs." "Indeed. Farnham orchestrated the counterfeit oil scheme, exploited Durand's recipes to launder funds, and framed Simone Durand by linking her inheritance to false dividends. When exposure loomed, he silenced Lafont." "That's a full menu," I said. "What's for dessert?" "Retribution," Wolfe murmured. He reached for the phone. "Archie, contact Inspector Kramer. Inform him I shall have a name for him within the hour." I dialed, but before the connection could click, the front bell rang with the insistence of bad news. Fritz's footsteps echoed, and a moment later his voice at the doorway. "Mr. Wolfe, a Mr. Miles Farnham insists upon entry." Wolfe's brows lifted. "Ah, Providence delivers dessert early." "Should I tell him the kitchen's closed?" I asked. "No, show him in. And, Archie, activate the wire you installed last month." I grinned. "The one for Kramer's benefit?" "Precisely. Our guest will not dine alone." Miles Farnham entered like he owned the air. Tall, silver at the temples, tailored to the point of sin, and radiating the sort of confidence that usually costs a few lives. He offered Wolfe a smile too perfect for digestion. "Mr. Wolfe," he said smoothly, "I hear you've been prying into my company's affairs. I dislike gossip almost as much as interference." Wolfe gestured toward a chair. "Do sit, Mr. Farnham. The upholstery is durable enough for arrogance." Farnham's jaw tightened as he sat. "You're amusing, but this isn't social. I'm here to negotiate." Wolfe folded his hands. "You overestimate your position." "I doubt it. You've built a theory around coincidences, recipes, initials, labels. You're clever, but you have no proof." "Oh?" Wolfe's tone was velvet over steel. "I have the notebook, the cipher, and the Paris cable confirming your corporation's fraudulent imports. I also have a recording device currently capturing your every word." For the first time, Farnham blinked. "You're bluffing." Archie leaned forward. "Care to bet?" Farnham's gaze darted to the corner, where the faint red light of the wire transmitter glowed behind a bookcase. His face drained. "You're violating the law," he hissed. "I?" Wolfe asked mildly. "No, sir. The law is listening with keen interest. Inspector Kramer is, I believe, at the other end." That was a stretch. The wire went only to a reel-to-reel recorder in the basement. But Farnham didn't know that, and Wolfe's poker face could have outbluffed a mirror. Farnham's composure wavered. "What do you want?" The truth, of course, Wolfe said, though I will settle for corroboration. I had no part in Durand's death. Untrue, Wolfe said. You feared exposure. When Lafont's greed jeopardized your scheme, you arranged his removal as well. That's slander. It is deduction. Wolfe's tone sharpened. The misprinted label, the so-called prod cut, was manufactured by your New Jersey facility. Only you possessed the authority to authorize production. When Durand discovered the counterfeit, you ensured silence. Lafont became your scapegoat. Simone Durand's inheritance provided convenient misdirection. Farnham leaned forward. You can't prove that in court. Perhaps not, Wolfe said. But the evidence will suffice for the press. That landed. Farnham's expression hardened. You wouldn't dare. Mr. Farnham, Wolfe said quietly, I dare everything except leaving this chair. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Farnham rose abruptly. This conversation is over. I think not, Wolfe said. If you leave now, the police will intercept you before you reach your car. He hesitated. They're not outside. They will be shortly. Bluff again. Perhaps, Wolfe said. But tell me, are you certain enough to test it? Farnham froze. Caught in that invisible web, Wolfe spun better than any spider. His breath hitched. Then, with forced calm, he sat again. All right. What's your price? Price? Wolfe's brows lifted. I am not a blackmailer, sir. My fee is already paid in justice. Spare me the sermon. Very well. Confess. I'll do no such thing. Wolfe turned to me. Archie, note that refusal. Then call Inspector Kramer. Inform him that our guest prefers handcuffs to courtesy. I reached for the phone. Farnham's hand shot out, gripping the arm of the chair. Wait, there's a way to settle this quietly. I doubt it, Wolfe said. You want the truth? Fine. His voice dropped. Yes, I ordered the counterfeit, but only to protect the company. Durand was bleeding it dry with his idealism. He refused to cheapen the product even as costs soared. I corrected him. He threatened exposure and I panicked. Wolfe's tone was almost gentle. And Lafont? He knew too much. I didn't kill him personally, but I knew he would be silenced. By whom? Farnham's eyes darted to me. Your pet detective, Saul Pantzer, wasn't the only man on retainer. I stiffened. You mean someone's been tailing me? Not anymore, Farnham said coldly. The man's gone missing. That gave me a chill even Wolfe noticed. His gaze flicked my way, then returned to Farnham. You have confessed, sir. Spare yourself the rest. I told you enough, Farnham said, standing. Erase that recording and I'll disappear. You'll never hear of me again. Tempting, Wolfe murmured. But impossible. Archie, open the safe. I crossed to the wall unit, spun the dial, and pulled out an envelope Wolfe had prepped earlier. Empty, but Farnham didn't know that. Wolfe slid the notebook inside, sealed it, and placed it on the desk. You see this, Mr. Farnham? Within the hour it goes to Inspector Kramer. You, however, will remain seated until he arrives. I'll see you ruined for this, Farnham said. Unlikely. I'm already intolerable. He lunged suddenly, snatching at the envelope. I moved faster, catching his wrist. For a man who lived on corporate lunches, he had surprising strength, but I've thrown heavier men out of speakeasies. After a brief struggle, he sagged back, gasping. That was ill-advised, Wolfe said. Goodwin, release him. His dignity is already sufficient punishment. Farnham slumped in silence. The ticking of the clock filled the room until the distant wail of a siren crept through the open window. Wolfe's eyes half closed. Ah, punctuality at last. Within minutes the bell rang. Fritz appeared, uncertain whether to admit the guests. Wolfe nodded. Show them in. Kramer entered, cigar lit. Face thunderous. What's this about you calling in a confession? Not I, Wolfe said. Mr. Farnham insisted. Farnham shot to his feet. I demand counsel. Yeah, Kramer said, flipping open his notebook. You'll get one. Meanwhile, let's hear your version again, preferably with fewer adjectives. As they led Farnham to wait under guard in the hall, Kramer said he wanted it wrapped with bows. He turned once toward Wolfe. You'll regret this. Wolfe didn't answer. The door closed. I said, That went well, considering. He exhaled slowly. Archie, I despise turbulence before dinner. You could have fooled me. Pfui, fetch me a beer. I went to the kitchen. Fritz had recovered enough to hand over a chilled glass with solemn ceremony. When I brought it back, Wolfe was staring at the now-closed notebook like it was scripture. He took the beer, sipped, and said quietly, "Goodwin, when you risk life for truth, you test my digestion more than any poison." "That's twice you've been sentimental this week," I said. "You'll ruin your reputation." He gave a soft grunt that might have been laughter. "My reliance on you, Archie, is a lament I bear gladly." "Gladly noted," I said. "But next time warn me before we host another confession over the lunch hour." He closed his eyes, the faintest hint of relief crossing his face. "Very well. Remind me at 7 that we are due for lamb chops. Justice, like appetite, must not go unfed." I grinned. That's one philosophy I can live with. Outside, the siren faded into the city hum, leaving the brownstone in its usual stillness, the kind that came only after Wolfe had rearranged the world to his liking. I closed the notebook, turned off the wire, and thought, not for the first time, that between Wolfe's brain and my luck we made a pretty fair sauce. By the time the showdown began, the brownstone smelled like civilization's last defense against barbarism, Fritz's cassoulet, simmering in quiet triumph. If justice had a fragrance, that was it. Beans, duck, and vindication. Wolfe had spent the afternoon in his office chair, the throne from which he ruled disorder, frowning at index cards and muttering like a priest preparing for mass. At 7:15 sharp, he tugged the bell cord once. Summons, not ceremony. "Archie," he said, "we dine when truth is settled. Have the room prepared." By 8 o'clock the suspects had assembled, every one of them looking like they'd wandered into their own funeral. Kramer came first, hat in hand but cigar at attention. Simone Durand followed, pale but composed, her gloves twisting in her lap. Fritz hovered at the doorway, his apron pressed to inspection, and Miles Farnham, flanked by 2 detectives, entered last, cuffed at the wrist but still carrying that boardroom smirk, like a medal for poor sportsmanship. Wolfe surveyed them, hands resting on the desk blotter as though he were about to carve a roast. "You may sit," he said, though not in comfort. Kramer dropped into the red chair with a grunt. "Let's have it, Wolfe. I've been up since 5. "That," Wolfe said dryly, "is not my responsibility, but I shall respect your fatigue by being thorough." He nodded to me. "Mr. Goodwin, Exhibit 1. I laid Henri Durand's notebook on the desk. The battered leather cover caught the lamplight. "Our late chef's magnum opus," I said, "part cookbook, part criminal ledger." Farnham gave a derisive laugh. "Recipes and riddles. You can't hang a man with bechamel." "No," Wolfe said, "but you may expose him with espagnole." He flipped the pages delicately. "Observe. Each recipe encodes financial transactions. Ingredient initials stand for partners and sums. Sauce espagnole, the base of the fraud, records your payments to Lafont for counterfeit oil. The cipher conceals dates, the amounts disguised as portions." Kramer leaned forward, cigar idle. "You're sure of this?" "Elementary verification," Wolfe said. "The totals align with Epicure Imports' missing revenue, traced through bank drafts already in your custody." I added, "Leave it to Wolfe to turn a cookbook into a confession manual." Kramer grunted. "If it works, I'll nominate him for Pastry Chef of the Year." Wolfe ignored us both. "Exhibit 2. I produced a small glass bottle, sealed and labelled sample, black truffle oil. The label bore its infamous scar, the misspelled Prodcut of France. Wolfe's finger hovered above it like a judge's gavel. "This bottle, retrieved from Lafont's hotel room, contains the same toxin that killed Henri Durand. Its misprint identifies manufacture by your New Jersey plant, Mr. Farnham. The French had no part in its making." Farnham's smile cracked. "Coincidence?" "Pfui," Wolfe's voice deepened. "Coincidence does not kill 3 men in a fortnight." He signalled again. "Exhibit 3, Miss Durand's inheritance." Simone flinched. I stepped forward with the Paris cablegram. Wolfe read it aloud, each word striking like a drumbeat. "Insurance beneficiary. Epicure Imports, New York. No family claims recognized." He looked up. "A fraudulent arrangement orchestrated by you, Mr. Farnham. You insured Durand's life under his company's name, then reaped the payment upon his death. Miss Durand was framed by association, and my cook by contamination." Farnham's composure slid. This is conjecture. On the contrary, Wolfe said, it is precision. Kramer turned, eyes narrowing. You admitting it, Farnham? Farnham's lips tightened. You've got nothing admissible. Wolfe leaned back, folding his hands. I have what matters. The pattern. Lafont's suicide was counterfeit, like his oil. You arranged it, using poison already traced to your stores. You had him silenced before he could name you. His hotel room was staged, the note forged. Kramer's jaw worked. Hell of a case, Wolfe. But can you prove he pulled the trigger? There was no trigger, Wolfe said. The revolver was an afterthought. Poison killed him. The oil bottle provided the means, and the ledger the motive. That, he paused, is your murderer. For a moment, silence held. Then Farnham laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. You think a jury will buy that? No one will take the word of a glutton over a businessman. Perhaps not, Wolfe said calmly, but they will take mine. He turned his gaze to Kramer. Inspector, I suggest you inspect the bottle's seal. The cork bears fingerprints. His. Kramer blinked, then shot a glance at Stebbins, who stepped forward and produced a handkerchief. We'll check it, he said. Farnham's colour drained. Those prints could have been planted. Wolfe's tone chilled. No, sir. You planted the bodies. I cultivate evidence. The silence stretched until Simone broke it. Then, it wasn't me? Her voice trembled between relief and disbelief. Wolfe's expression softened a fraction. No, Miss Durand. Your only guilt was kinship and misplaced trust. She pressed a hand to her throat. And Fritz? Exonerated, Wolfe said. Entirely. His conscience may rest, and his cassoulet will once again be eaten without suspicion. Fritz blinked rapidly, then retreated toward the dining room as though forgiveness itself needed busting. Kramer rose, glancing at Farnham. All right, you're done. Pearlie, take him. Stebbins clicked the cuffs back into place. Farnham sputtered. You'll regret this. My lawyers will dine alone, Wolfe said. Kramer sighed. You did the department's job cleaner than we could, Wolfe. Damn cleaner. Wolfe inclined his head. Phooey. Kramer chuckled. That's gratitude, huh? It is acknowledgement, Wolfe said. When the police departed with Farnham in tow, the brownstone returned to its natural order, the air easing, the tension retreating like smoke up a chimney. Wolfe reached for his beer, poured it with ceremony, and gestured toward me. Archie, attend. We are to dine. I followed him into the dining room, where the long mahogany table gleamed under lamplight. Fritz, beaming now, set down the cassoulet like a trophy. Simone sat hesitantly, still pale but freer, while Wolfe assumed his rightful position at the head. The first spoonful silenced us all. Even I had to admit justice tasted better with duck fat. In this kitchen, I said, justice is always served hot. Wolfe eyed me. Spare me aphorisms at table. Only if you stop stealing mine. That earned a faint harumph, which, translated from Wolfian, meant he was amused. When plates were cleared and Fritz returned with coffee, Wolfe leaned back. Miss Durand, your uncle's honour is restored. I suggest you remain in New York only long enough to settle his estate. Beyond that, your future is your own. Thank you, Mr. Wolfe, she said softly. And Mr. Goodwin. Pleasure's mine, I said. Though next time let's skip the poison. Her smile flickered, shy but genuine. Kramer had left behind a faint haze of cigar smoke, lingering like punctuation. Wolfe regarded it as though it were an after-dinner guest. Archie, he said at last, there is an observation I wish to make. Brace yourself, I told her. This could be profound. He ignored me. My reliance on you, Archie, is a lament I bear gladly. I blinked. That's your idea of a compliment? Precisely. Excessive warmth would suggest fever. Fritz, returning with dessert, looked ready to cry into the custard. Wolfe raised his glass, not wine, but beer, golden and cold. To loyalty, he said gravely. It is a flavour most men forget. I raised mine, ginger ale, of course. Same to you, boss, though I'll take mine with bubbles. He sniffed. Barbarian. Efficient barbarian. That did it. One corner of his mouth twitched, which, in Wolfe's world, was as good as a grin. Fritz poured seconds, Simone thanked him, and for once the house on West 35th Street felt less like a fortress and more like a family table. Outside, the city muttered through the rain, But inside the brownstone, equilibrium had been restored. The guilty were gone, the innocent redeemed, and the cassoulet was still hot. When Wolfe finally pushed back his chair, signalling closure, I gathered the plates. "Another case cooked, served, and cleared," I said. "Archie," he replied, "refrain from culinary metaphors." "I can't help it," I said. "You run the finest restaurant in town." He raised an eyebrow. "If so, you are its most insubordinate waiter." We stood there for a moment, me with the dishes, him with his dignity, until Fritz appeared to rescue us both. Wolfe rose slowly, every gesture deliberate, and made for the elevator. "I shall attend to my orchids. They at least bloom without argument." "Give them my compliments," I said. He paused halfway in. "No, Archie, you may keep them." The doors slid shut. I turned off the lights, the soft click echoing across the polished room. The smell of cassoulet lingered like victory, and I figured maybe that was how justice ought to end, not with applause or headlines, but with dinner served on time. "Fritz, attend to the kitchen. Let them bark. Their ignorance is their nourishment." Fritz bowed slightly, though his face was tight as pastry left too long in the oven. When he'd gone, I said, "He's taking it hard." "As any craftsman would when his honour is defamed," Wolfe said, "but guiltless men must not run." "That sounds like a sermon." "It is an axiom, and you will record it for the eventual memoir you insist upon writing." I grinned. Chapter title, "Wolfe Loses His Temper and I Keep My Job." Before he could retort, the doorbell rang. Fritz had barely disappeared down the hall, so I answered it myself. Outside stood a delivery boy in a green cap holding a brown paper parcel. "Package for Mr. Nero Wolfe," he said, eyeing me like he'd seen my face in the morning edition. "Sign here." I signed, tipped him a dime, and shut the door before the reporters could photograph my penmanship. The package was small, jar-shaped, light and cold to the touch. No return address. I brought it into the office. "Special delivery. Smells innocent, looks suspicious." Wolfe eyed it from his chair. "Unwrap it cautiously." I slit the paper with my penknife. Inside, a glass jar nestled in cotton, labelled in tidy script. Sample, black truffle oil. "Another fan letter," I said. "Should I open it or pour it on the police?" "Neither." "Fritz!" Wolfe's voice thundered through the house. The chef appeared almost instantly, which proved his nerves were sharper than his knives. "Sir?" "Did you order this?" Wolfe gestured at the jar. Fritz shook his head. "No, sir. We have no supplier by that label." "Then remove it, gently to the refrigerator. Do not open it." Fritz obeyed, hands steady as he carried the thing off like nitroglycerin. When he'd gone, Wolfe exhaled. "Our adversary is clever." "You mean stupid," I said. "Sending us a poison sample by mail is like posting fingerprints to the DA." "Not if the intention was intimidation," he replied. "To warn, not to kill." "Great," I said. "They're sending us threats in gift wrap." He leaned back, fingers steepled. "We will test it. Theodore has chemicals for the orchids. They will suffice. Meanwhile, Archie, inform Saul Panzer I require his discretion." "Saul? You expect company?" "I expect movement. The scoundrel may be named L'Epicurian." That earned a pause. "You've got a name already?" "A signature. Miss Durand confided in me last evening. She has received letters, anonymous, signed L'Epicurian. Threats cloaked in culinary metaphor. The stew must boil again, and the taste of death lingers. Childish, yet significant." I whistled. "A poetic killer. Manhattan's full of surprises." "Archie," Wolfe said dryly, "fetch the microscope." I set it on the desk while he fetched the sealed jar from Fritz, using a handkerchief like it was radioactive. He dipped a glass rod into the oil, mixed it with reagent, and waited. Within seconds, the liquid turned a shade of greenish-brown that didn't belong in nature. "There," Wolfe said softly. "Bitter alkaloid, the same chemical used in Durand's poisoning. Our correspondent has sent proof of guilt, or mockery." "Or both," I said. He replaced the lid carefully. "We shall let science confirm what insolence implies. Take this to the laboratory on 37th. Have them perform a full analysis. And, Archie—" "Yes, sir." "Do not, under any circumstance, speak to reporters. They will interpret silence as mystery, and mystery as guilt, which serves us better than denial." "You're becoming downright Machiavellian." "Pfui," I am practical. By mid-morning, the pack had doubled. By 11, I was fighting my way through the brownstone gauntlet. Photographers, columnists, and one kid hawking the Gazette for a nickel. I ducked into a cab and gave the driver the address. The lab smelled like disinfectant and ambition. I handed over the jar, signed the receipt, and asked the technician to rush it. If it's what I think, you'll want to wear gloves. He nodded, looking suddenly pale. You expecting results fast? Sooner than the obituaries, I said. Outside, the crowd had thickened. I took the long way home, cutting through 9th Avenue, when I spotted a man tailing me in a brown overcoat and a hat pulled low. He had the kind of walk that said he knew the sidewalk too well. I slowed. He slowed. When I stopped at a corner stand for coffee, he stopped 2 stalls down to buy cigarettes he didn't light. Classic amateur surveillance. I ducked into an alley, looped around the block, and came up behind him. Looking for something? He stiffened. You, Goodwin? Depends. You selling subscriptions or trouble? He produced a folded envelope. Message? From a friend. I took it. What's your friend's name? He shrugged and walked off. The envelope contained a single card with embossed lettering, L'Epicurian. Beneath it, handwritten, Your palate is refined. Beware what you taste next. Cute. I pocketed it and hailed another cab. By the time I got back, the siege had gotten worse. One reporter had climbed the stoop railing for a better angle until Fritz chased him off with a broom. Inside, Wolfe was dictating a note to Simone over the telephone, voice crisp as winter. You will stay at your hotel, he said. Do not answer anonymous letters. Do not indulge dramatics. We are progressing. He hung up and turned to me. Well? Delivered, tested, followed and threatened, all before lunch. Your name's spreading faster than mayonnaise in July. He frowned. A vulgar simile. You have something? I handed him the card. He read it and grunted. As I surmised, the pseudonym is deliberate, a rival chef's sobriquet from the 30s. He was notorious for stealing recipes and selling them. If this is our adversary, he has resurrected his ghost. Maybe it's just a copycat with good stationery. Possibly. Yet style betrays continuity. Fritz entered then, clutching his apron. Sir, I cannot remain. The calls, the reporters, my name, my honour. Wolfe raised a hand. Fritz. The single word froze the room. Fleeing guilt is confession by another name. You will not indulge cowardice. Sit. Fritz hesitated, then obeyed. Listen to me, Wolfe said, his tone uncharacteristically gentle. You are my chef. Your work is beyond reproach. Let fools chatter. They will choke on their own slander. We will clear your name through reason, not retreat. Tears glimmered, but Fritz straightened. Yes, sir. Good. Now fetch lunch. We dine as usual. Order is armour. When he left, Wolfe turned to me. Archie, Saul Panzer will assist you. Find him. Tell him to shadow all suppliers of truffle oil, especially Epicure imports. They are our probable source. You want discretion or fireworks? Both, he said. You are the spear I cannot wield. Use discretion. I nodded. And if Kramer comes sniffing again? Tell him, Wolfe said, reaching for the bell cord, that I am occupied in defence of civilization, one meal at a time. The bell rang. Fritz appeared with the lunch tray, veal cutlets, spinach soufflé, and a silence thick enough to spread with butter. As Wolfe lifted his fork, I glanced toward the window. The reporters were still there, vultures in fedoras waiting for scraps. I couldn't help grinning. When reporters smell scandal, I said, they bite harder than Fritz's schnitzel. Wolfe looked up, one brow arched. Archie, the vulgarity of your imagery offends even the guilty. Sit, eat. The world can wait an hour while reason digests. And as Fritz poured the beer, I figured he was right. If truth was on the menu, it was going to take time to cook. At 10:15 that night, I was crouched behind a stack of flour sacks in the service corridor of the Hotel Marceau, wondering why all the best leads smelled like onions and deceit. Saul Panzer stood beside me, compact as a folded umbrella, eyes steady on the kitchen door down the hall. Inside, the low hum of conversation mixed with the hiss of steam and the metallic clatter of pots. There he is, Saul murmured. Through the glass, I caught sight of a man built like a question mark. Bent shoulders, grey hair slicked back, white coat too clean for honest labour. Victor Lafont, alias L'Epicurian, the culinary phantom who'd been stirring up more than sauces. For a ghost, I whispered. Lafont ate well. Saul's mouth twitched. So does his friend. He nodded toward a second man at the far end of the kitchen, tall, well-fed, hat tilted low. They bent over a ledger, voices low. I couldn't hear the words, but Lafont's gestures were theatrical enough to need subtitles. Then the tall man handed him a thick envelope. Money, or something worth more. Saul murmured, "You want a closer look?" "I was born wanting one," I said. "Cover me." I slipped through the side door, hugging the shadows behind the wine racks. The air was heavy with butter and deceit. The cooks were long gone. Only Lafont and his benefactor remained. When they stepped into the pantry, I darted to the counter, flipped open the ledger, and pulled out my miniature camera. 3 quick clicks. The pages were scrawled with initials beside figures in francs and dollars. My eye snagged on one. A.D. Anna Durand. That name had more lives than a Broadway revival. If Anna wasn't a ghost, someone had been spending in her shadow. A sound behind me, Lafont's voice, sharp and French. "Who is there?" I didn't stay to translate. I slid the ledger shut, ducked behind a pillar, and slipped out through the service door. Saul was already moving. We vanished into the alley before Lafont's curses could echo. Once clear, Saul gave me the look he saves for when I cheat death and paperwork in the same hour. "You got it?" "Better than that," I said, patting the camera. "Our ghost keeps a ledger, and one of his clients used to be named Durand." Saul nodded. "Figures. He's staying at this hotel, room 814. I can keep eyes on him till dawn." "Do it, and keep your hat low. He's jumpy." By midnight I was back at the brownstone. Wolfe sat in his office robe, book open, beer sweating gently beside him. He looked up as I came in, the corner of his mouth twitching toward displeasure. "You smell," he said, "of grease and triumph. Explain." I dropped into my chair and gave him the short version. Lafont, the ledger, the mystery man, and the initials A.D. Wolfe listened, eyes half closed, fingers drumming. When I finished, he said quietly, "Reckless." "I've been called worse." He opened his eyes fully now. "Your recklessness, though repugnant to me, was serendipitous." "That's practically affection." "Do not tempt me, Archie. Show me the film." I handed over the camera. He examined it as though it contained scripture. If Lafont is indeed L'Epicurian, his accomplices extend beyond the kitchen. A chemist turned flavorist. He could alter any substance, disguise any taste. The poisoner's dream. "Which brings us to A.D., I said. Anna Durand, supposedly dead or vanished. Simone's mysterious aunt." Wolfe's brows drew together. "Bring Miss Durand here, tonight." "That might rattle her cage." "Good. Rattled cages produce truth." She arrived just after 1. Fritz, half asleep, opened the door but refused to leave the room until she was seated. Simone looked drawn but resolute, wrapped in a coat too thin for the hour. "Miss Durand," Wolfe said, "you're acquainted with a Victor Lafont." She hesitated. I know of him. My uncle despised him." "Indeed. Yet his ledger bears the initials A.D., your late Aunt Anna Durand." Her hands clenched. "My aunt. We believed she had vanished before the war. I learned she is alive only days ago." "And yet," I said, "someone was still paying Lafont under her initials." Simone looked stricken. "Then she lived, or someone used her name." "Both are possible," Wolfe said. "Lafont may have used her identity to mask his dealings, or she participated." She shook her head. "No, she was proud but honest." "Honesty," Wolfe murmured, "is seldom hereditary." The clock chimed 1:30. Wolfe leaned back, eyes fixed on her. "You will remain available, Miss Durand. The ghosts of kitchens past are restless, and their appetite for silence grows thin." When she had gone, Wolfe reached for his beer. "Archie, have the negatives developed. Saul will watch Lafont. I will deduce his patron." "Fine. And what should I tell Kramer when he comes pounding again?" "Tell him," Wolfe said, closing his eyes, "that I am preparing a meal of facts, and he shall have his serving when it is cooked." That sounded like dismissal, so I stood. As I reached the door, Wolfe added, "Archie." "Yeah?" He opened one eye. "You did well, but do not make a habit of surviving stupidity." I grinned. No promises, boss. By the time the cable from Paris arrived, I'd stopped hoping for good news before breakfast. The messenger shoved it at me like it was overdue rent, and the second I saw the word Durand on the form, I knew it wasn't a fan letter. I carried it into Wolfe's office, where the air was still warming to its daily aroma of orchids and indignation. He was seated behind his desk, half buried in correspondence, brow furrowed as if punctuation itself had offended him. "A cable from Paris," I announced. It came faster than Fritz's patience. He extended a hand without looking up. "Read it." I tore it open. "Insurance Bureau, Rue de l'Opéra, beneficiary of policy on Henri Durand, Epicure Imports, New York, USA. Stop. No family claims recognized. Stop. Records indicate commercial lien on production formula. Stop." Wolfe's eyes lifted like the sun breaking through suspicion. "Epicure Imports." "Yeah," I said. "A corporation with a name like that either sells spices or sins." "Both," he murmured. "Fetch the ledger you photographed." I laid out the printed photos from the darkroom. Saul had developed them overnight. Wolfe studied the pages with a finger tracing the looping handwriting. Victor Lafont, payments noted quarterly, references to shipments marked EI and coded initials, AD again. "Anna Durand," I said. "Looks like she and Lafont were in the same club, and not for bridge." "Indeed." Wolfe tapped the column. "Lafont supplied counterfeit truffle oil under the Epicure label. Henri Durand discovered it, threatened exposure, and died for it." I leaned back. "So we've gone from recipes to racketeering." "Precisely. The culinary arts meet commerce, and neither comes out clean." He reached for the bell cord. Fritz appeared, hair immaculate, though the tension in his shoulders hadn't faded since his reputation became a city-wide chew toy. "Fritz," Wolfe said, "retrieve the file on our food importers, particularly those registered as subsidiaries." Fritz hesitated. "Sir, that company, Epicure Imports, I once delivered to them, years ago, for a charity banquet. They were careless with ingredients." Wolfe nodded. "Careless or corrupt?" "I cannot say." "You mustn't. Facts will suffice." Wolfe waved him off gently, then glanced at me. "You see, Archie, the threads tighten." "Threads, sure, but who's holding the spool?" Before he could answer, the telephone rang. I grabbed it. "Nero Wolfe's residence, Goodwin speaking." A familiar transatlantic crackle followed by a crisp, Parisian voice. "This is Inspector Marchand, Sûreté Nationale. I sent the cable. There is one more thing. Epicure Imports is under partial ownership by a Miss Simone Durand. Does that name—" "It rings louder than a dinner bell. Thanks, Inspector." I hung up and turned to Wolfe. "Our elegant Miss Durand has a share in the company that insured her uncle's life." His brows rose. "Ah, so sentiment and profit dance their usual waltz." Maybe she didn't know. Pfui, she knew something. At that moment, the office door opened without ceremony. Simone herself, perfectly timed like a curse. She wore a dove-grey suit and a look halfway between defiance and despair. "Mr. Wolfe," she said, "I came as soon as I heard about Lafont's arrest." "He has not been arrested," Wolfe said, "merely observed. Sit." She obeyed, clutching her purse. "Then I must tell you before it's too late. Yes, I hold shares in Epicure Imports. My aunt's estate transferred them to me last year. I didn't know what it meant until now." "That may be true," Wolfe said, "but it is insufficient. I never dealt with Lafont. I only received dividends through a broker." "Dividends derived from deceit," Wolfe said softly. "Miss Durand, you were being blackmailed." She gasped. "How can you know that?" "Because you came here tonight instead of to the police. You fear exposure, not guilt." Her silence was answer enough. Wolfe's tone gentled slightly. "Tell us, who held the threat?" "A man, I don't know his real name. He wrote as L'Epicurian. He said my inheritance was tainted, that my uncle had falsified accounts, and that unless I paid, the French press would destroy our family's name." Archie whistled softly. "Blackmail's got a better profit margin than catering." She turned to me, eyes bright with desperation. "I didn't pay him, I swear it." "Then someone else did," Wolfe said. "Perhaps with their life." She flinched, rose, and hurried out before either of us could stop her. The door had barely closed when Wolfe reached for his beer. "Archie, note this. Guilt unspoken is as loud as guilt confessed. I scribbled it down. You're collecting aphorisms now. One must occupy the interlude before intrusion. Which intrusion? My question died under the sound of the front bell. Fritz's footsteps, the murmur of protest, and then the office door swung open again, this time revealing Inspector Kramer, flanked by Pearlie Stebbins and the scent of cigar smoke. Evening, Wolfe, Kramer said, waving a paper. He's in my custody outside. Give me the bows, Wolfe. I leaned back in my chair. Must be serious if the ink's still wet. It is, Kramer said. Judge signed it an hour ago. I'm here for all correspondence and foreign communications regarding Henri Durand. Wolfe gestured toward the pile on his desk. Take them. You'll find honesty dull, but perhaps instructive. That threw him for half a beat. You're cooperating? I am civilized, Wolfe said. And famished. Fritz. Kramer blinked. You're what? Hungry, Inspector. Dinner is a sacrament, not a suspicion. You will join us. Now, waiter. But Fritz was already entering with a tray of veal cutlets in Madeira sauce and a bottle of wine. The aroma could have made a corpse reconsider. Kramer hesitated, then muttered, I skipped lunch. Then you are doubly foolish, Wolfe said. Sit. Pearlie grunted. You serious, Inspector? We eating with him now? Shut up, Pearlie, Kramer said, pulling out a chair. If this guy's hiding anything, he won't talk on an empty stomach anyway. I poured wine all around. Mine water, Kramer's generous, Wolfe's precise. The atmosphere thawed slightly. Between bites, Wolfe spoke evenly. Inspector, you should know that Epicure Imports, the alleged beneficiary, is the key. They trafficked in counterfeit truffle oil. Durand discovered it. Lafont distributed it. Miss Durand's connection was inheritance, not complicity. Kramer grunted. You got proof? Wolfe pointed to the cablegram. From Paris. Cross-check it with your embassy. Pearlie muttered. All this over fancy mushrooms. Truffles, Wolfe corrected coldly. The distinction between fungus and fortune, Mr. Stebbins, is civilization. Kramer smirked. He's right, Pearlie. Try not to ruin the sauce. I said, when insurance meets cuisine, someone's bound to choke on paperwork. Kramer's grin flickered and died. All right, Wolfe. Let's suppose you're right. This Epicure Imports racket killed Durand and Piquet, but who's behind it? I can't arrest a trademark. You won't need to, Wolfe said, wiping his mouth. You will soon have a name. The ledger lists Lafont's payments from a domestic account. Find that, and you'll have your man or woman. I will be among the orchids. Meaning the day's debate was adjourned. I grabbed my hat. As I headed for the door, he called, Archie? Yeah? Be wary of charm. In women or in sources, it conceals bitterness. That was Wolfe's version of be careful. I nodded and stepped out into the Manhattan glare, the letter tucked in my pocket and the echo of truffle oil still clinging to memory. Whatever lay behind the cross in that saucepot, it wasn't culinary. It was murder, served continental style. Later that same afternoon, after Wolfe approved the note to Simone, it was one of those grey Manhattan afternoons when the city smells like damp newspapers and ambition left too long under the heat lamp. I had my marching orders from Wolfe. Attend the Cercle Gourmand, observe discretion, and keep your tongue civil, which, translated, meant, don't start a food fight. The Cercle Gourmand made its headquarters on East 54th, a panelled den of culinary superiority where white jackets and swollen egos gathered to pretend they were curing the world's hunger problem. The brass nameplate gleamed as if polished hourly by inferiors. Inside, the air was a broth of cigar smoke, garlic, and pretension. A line of portraits stared down from the walls, famous chefs in starched whites, each looking like he'd just lost a duel but won the recipe. A maitre d' with an accent crisp enough to cut butter asked my name. When I said, Archie Goodwin, Nero Wolfe's assistant, the man's eyebrows rose so high they nearly left his forehead. He showed me into an office that looked like a battlefield fought with cutlery. Armand Piquet, president of the Cercle, was built like a roasting goose, broad, shiny, and full of self-importance. He had a face too smooth for his age and fingers that trembled as they lit a Gauloise. Ah, Monsieur Goodwin, he said, voice marinated in sarcasm. I had expected the great Wolfe himself, but of course, he does not move, n'est-ce pas? That's right, I said. We keep him stationary for quality control. His lip curled. And he sends you, his errand boy, to question me about poor Durand. Just the facts, I told him. When did you last see Henri Durand alive? Last month. He came to our dinner. He was difficult. Define difficult. He insulted American cuisine, Piquet said. He said your Fritz Brenner had sold his art for money. Fritz happens to be an honest cook, I said, and not in the market for European snobbery. He shrugged. Provincial loyalty. Brenner makes meatloaf for millionaires, no? I smiled. At least they survive lunch. That earned me a glare. His hand, still trembling slightly, stubbed out the cigarette with unnecessary violence. On the desk sat a stack of invoices, a leather ledger, and an unopened telegram. The envelope's corner was marked New York-Paris Express. I nodded toward it. Fan mail? He covered it quickly with a folder. A private matter. Sure, I said, but you might want to open it before it spoils. He scowled. Monsieur Goodwin, if this is harassment, I will call my lawyer. Please do, I said easily. Wolfe loves lawyers. They season his appetite for logic. The room had gone still except for the ticking of a brass clock. I stood, pretending to admire the decor. On the desk's edge lay a matchbook, black with silver embossing, Le Poivre Noir, Midtown's authentic French experience. I flicked it open. Only one match gone. Nice place, I asked. He hesitated. An imitation. Tourists and Americans who think garlic makes anything French. I'll keep that in mind next time I'm homesick for snails, I said, pocketing the matchbook casually. He caught the motion but said nothing. His eyes had narrowed, though, calculating, not angry. You are wasting your time, Monsieur Goodwin, he said. Durand was poisoned in Paris, not in my kitchen. Maybe not, I said, heading for the door. But murder travels better than soufflé. By the time I got back to the brownstone, dusk was curling over the rooftops like a burnt edge. Fritz met me at the door with his usual mix of politeness and anxiety. Monsieur Wolfe is in the office. He waits for you. That was never good news. Wolfe waiting meant Wolfe stewing. He was at his desk, surrounded by an open notebook, 2 invoices, and a beer that looked halfway through negotiations. Report, he said. I hung my hat, loosened my tie, and dropped into my chair. Arm on Piquet, all starch, no soul. Hates Fritz, worships himself. Hands like he's auditioning for St. Vitus. He's got an unopened telegram and an attitude that smells of guilt. Wolfe grunted. Details. He admitted Durand insulted him, but claims innocence. Also, I picked this up. I set the matchbook on Wolfe's blotter. He lifted it delicately between thumb and forefinger. Le Poivre Noir, that name again. You deduced connection. Last restaurant Durand visited in New York, according to Simone. Piquet had its matchbook lying open like a calling card. Pfui! Wolfe leaned back, eyes half closed. Ego, vanity, rivalry. These are the common condiments of the culinary profession, yet they rarely kill. Maybe the killer was going for something spicier. He ignored that. However, this invoice intrigues me. He tapped a sheet of thin paper on the desk. A shipment of truffle oil, imported through Epicure Imports, delivered to Le Poivre Noir 2 weeks before Durand's death. Note the discrepancy. 30 litres paid, 40 billed. I said, someone skimming or padding the bottle. Or, Wolfe murmured, adulterating. He reached for his magnifier and studied the handwriting. The killer did not need to poison the sauce. He merely needed to taint the oil. I said, meaning it wasn't culinary, it was chemical. He looked up sharply. Precisely. That earned me a grudging nod. Wolfe giving a nod was like a bishop blessing a sinner. It didn't happen without divine provocation. Fritz! Wolfe bellowed. A moment later, Fritz appeared, towel in hand. Yes, sir? Do we possess any truffle oil from Epicure Imports? Fritz blinked. No, sir. We buy only from Monsieur Charvet's house. Excellent. Continue so. Wolfe waved him away. When Fritz left, Wolfe said, You observe, Archie, how a single deviation in taste betrays conspiracy. I observed that Piquet was nervous enough to overcook water. His tremor may be guilt or merely senility. Still, the unopened telegram, unsent letters and unopened messages are the fingerprints of deceit. Want me to go back and open it for him? He scowled. Do not be vulgar. We will learn its contents otherwise. Through Lon Cohen? Indeed. You will telephone him now. Tell him I authorize a modest leak. I picked up the receiver and dialed. Lon's voice came through smoky and amused. Don't tell me Wolfe's gone international again. Better, I said. A Parisian chef's death with New York roots. Name's Henri Durand. Ever heard of him? Sure. The Gazette's got it under embargo till the French consulate confirms. You want me to blow the lid? Wolfe says publish, but tastefully. Nothing about Wolfe's tasteful. I'll run it as Parisian poison case. That should keep the foodies awake. Just don't mention Fritz by name yet. You got it, but I'll need a quote. Use this, I said. Nero Wolfe refuses to let poison spoil good cooking. Lon laughed. That's terrible. Perfect. You'll have front page of the lifestyle section by morning. I hung up. Wolfe was watching me like a cat at the mouse hole. Well? He'll print it. Whole city'll be buzzing before dinner. Wolfe frowned. The attention will smoke the guilty or annoy me intolerably. Either outcome has value. Glad to be of service. He took a sip of beer. You enjoyed baiting those chefs, didn't you? I'm developing a taste for haute ego. If ambition was seasoning, they'd choke themselves. That cracked the corner of his mouth into what might have been a smile. Archie, your relish for gossip rivals your talent for provocation. Thanks, boss. I do my best. He studied the matchbook again. This establishment, Le Poivre Noir, we must visit. We? I asked, too fast. He gave me a long look. You, naturally. My mass forbids such frivolity. Thought so. Want me to go tonight? No, after lunch today. I will require you present at the Gazette by phone in the morning for follow-up. We must monitor reaction. Publicity can flush more than birds. He leaned back, closing his eyes. That was my signal the shutters were going down for the evening. Anything else? I asked. Yes. Bring me the truffle oil invoice file from the cabinet. I will extract a note for reference. I fetched it, and he scrawled a few lines in his neat slanted hand, muttering about alkaloids and bitterness. When he finished, he folded the note and placed it in the safe. You think the killer used the oil as delivery system? I asked. I think, Wolfe said, that greed and pride form the base of every deadly sauce. The truffle merely disguised their flavour. He pulled the bell cord. Fritz. Moments later, Fritz appeared again, tray in hand. Dinner, sir. The lid lifted, releasing a waft of something that smelled civilized. Wolfe's eyes half closed like a man in prayer. Archie, he said between breaths, tomorrow you will dine where Durand last did. Observe everything. The guilty often season their lies too strongly. Sure, I said, and if the chef offers me a special sauce, I'll send it home in a jar for analysis. Do so, Wolfe murmured, already raising his fork. That was dismissal in any language. I got up, slipped the matchbook into my pocket, and headed out. Behind me, Wolfe's voice drifted through the clink of cutlery. Archie, should you encounter that fool Piquet again, remind him that arrogance, unlike truffle oil, does not improve with age. I grinned. Will do, boss. As I closed the office door, the smell of dinner followed me, rich, confident, unpoisoned. But somewhere uptown, someone else was seasoning their next move, and I had the feeling it wasn't going to be mild. The next evening at 7:03 sharp, the maitre d' at Le Poivre Noir greeted me with a bow so low it risked diplomatic incident. If I'd known murder dined here that night, I might have worn darker shoes. The place was dim and glossy, all brass rails and mirror panels, a shrine to the belief that the higher the prices, the smaller the portions. Simone Durand sat at a corner table under a mural of Bacchus that looked ready to faint from indigestion. Her black dress was simple, her expression not. Across from her sat Armand Piquet, president of the Cercle Gourmand, wearer of arrogance like cologne, and tonight's designated dinner guest. Mr. Goodwin, Simone said as I joined them. Monsieur Piquet was kind enough to accept my invitation. Kindness has its limits, Piquet muttered. I come only to clarify, not to gossip. Fine by me, I said, hanging my hat on the chair. I left my gossip shoes at home. A waiter appeared with menus. Simone ordered the duck à l'orange. Piquet went for the same, declaring that imitation was the sincerest form of culinary theft. I picked steak, medium rare, one of life's certainties. While the orchestra tuned in the corner, Piquet launched into a monologue on Durand's decline. He lost his palate. He could not taste distinction. The man, bah, he would ruin a sauce by sentiment. Some people ruin it by bragging, I said. He glared but kept eating. His hands, I noticed, were steady now, no tremor, either confidence or adrenaline. The waiter poured wine, burgundy for the duck, claret for me. I raised my glass to Piquet. To French diplomacy, still conquering one table at a time, he sneered. Americans toast to everything, even ignorance. Sure, I said, it goes with the steak. Simone's laugh was small but grateful. Gentlemen, please. We ate in uneasy truce. The duck gleamed, the sauce perfect. Then, halfway through dessert, Piquet dabbed his mouth, muttered something about telephoning his club, and rose. He never reached the door. A crash of glass, a gasp, and the room froze. Piquet lay sprawled across the carpet outside the dining area, face tilted toward the chandeliers like a man admiring heaven's wallpaper. The maitre d' shouted for a doctor, someone screamed in French, and Simone's teacup hit the floor. I was out of my chair before anyone else moved. His pulse? Nothing. Eyes open, unfocused. His skin was pale, not from fear, but from something deeper. Simone clutched my arm. Is he? Yeah, I said. He ordered the duck and left us the goose. A waiter gawked. Monsieur, you cannot... Save it. Get me a phone. By the time the police arrived, I'd corralled the staff in the lounge and tried to keep Simone upright. Kramer came in first, trench coat open, cigar already lit. The orchestra had stopped playing, but the smell of truffle sauce still hung thick as accusation. Well, Kramer said, looking at the body, this joint's got more sauce than sense. What happened? Dinner, then death, I said. Name's Armand Piquet. You can confirm his credentials at the Cercle Gourmand. Hell, I know who he is, Kramer growled. And you, Goodwin, seem to be the common factor in too many corpses lately. I held my hands up. Coincidence. Wolfe says I attract excitement like a bad oyster. He crouched beside the body. Poison, looks like. Any idea what he ate last? Duck à l'orange, same as the lady. She's fine. Kramer's eyes flicked to Simone. Convenient. Or lucky, I said. Take your pick. The coroner arrived, a compact man with a portable kit. He drew a small vial of stomach contents, sniffed and made a face. Same alkaloid signature as that Paris case, he muttered. The chef murder. That tightened Kramer's jaw. Wonderful. So now we've got French poison in a Manhattan restaurant. You'll be hearing from the embassy. I found myself staring at the table where we'd eaten. The plates had been cleared, but Simone's napkin lay folded beside her untouched glass of wine. Piquet's napkin, though, had fallen to the floor, stained a deep purple. I picked it up, held it against the light. The colour didn't match the burgundy we'd been served. It was darker, nearly black. Kramer noticed. What's that? Looks like he spilled his drink, I said, then frowned. Except his wine was red, not tar. Kramer called over a uniform. Bag that, Simone spoke weakly. He poured his own glass before the waiter came. He said he preferred a private vintage. Private enough to kill him, Kramer said grimly. They carted the body out through a corridor of horrified diners. The chatter rose behind us like a storm. Simone, pale but steady, turned to me. It is happening again, Mr. Goodwin. The same poison. Don't go fainting on me twice in one evening, I said, guiding her toward a chair. Kramer's got all the sympathy of a tax collector. I swear I know nothing of this. I believe you, I said, which means someone doesn't. At 9:15 I was back at the brownstone, the night pressing against the windows like nosy neighbours. Fritz met me at the door, voice tight. Mr. Wolfe is waiting. He was in the office, arms folded, expression glacial. The Gazette lay open beside his chair. The front-page headline blared, Parisian poison case hits New York. So, he said quietly, another death. Piquet, collapsed at dinner. Same poison, Kramer's got the sample. Wolfe's eyes flicked upward. Confound it. I expressly instructed you to dine, not conduct autopsies. I was working up an appetite, I said. Anyway, the pattern fits. Both chefs connected to Durand, both poisoned with that fancy alkaloid. He gestured for the details. I gave him the rundown. Piquet's tremor gone, the napkin stain, Simone's story. When I finished, Wolfe's gaze drifted toward the ceiling as if seeking divine explanation. Archie, you are fortunate I possess restraint. Were I a man of action, you would now be dismissed for recklessness. Then it's lucky you're sedentary, I said. Phooey, You jest in the face of calamity. Fritz! The chef appeared, face drawn. Yes, sir? Our household has now twice been linked to poison. That malign rumour must end. Bring the truffle oil for analysis. Sir, ours is pure. I know it, but facts must conquer fear. Fritz left, wounded pride in every step. A knock followed, heavy, official. Kramer entered without waiting for an invite. His hat stayed on, which told me he was angry. Wolfe, he said, your boy's got himself in the soup again. That Frenchman died of the same toxin as Durand. I want samples from Brenner's kitchen. Wolfe's face darkened. Inspector, my kitchen is inviolate. Fritz's domain is governed by rigour, not recklessness. Then let me take what I need. No, Wolfe's voice carried like thunder over velvet. I do not permit my table to become a morgue. Kramer's cigar froze halfway to his mouth. You want to play high priest? Fine. But if I find a link, you'll both answer for it. Archie stepped forward. Lay off, Kramer. Fritz couldn't poison a mouse without apologizing first. Goodwin, Kramer snapped. You're not helping. Wolfe's hand lifted, silencing us both. Mr. Goodwin speaks intemperately, he said, but he speaks for my conscience. For a second, the air in the room thickened. Two men, both stubborn, neither yielding. Then Kramer sighed and took off his hat. All right, Wolfe. I'll wait for your report, but I want it fast. You shall have it, Wolfe said, when I have truth, not conjecture. Kramer left, closing the door with the weary dignity of a man who'd rather slam it. Wolfe reached for the bell cord. Fritz appeared once more, silent. Coffee, Wolfe said, and serenity. When we were alone again, he turned to me. Archie, prepare a memorandum for the morning. Include the napkin, the wine discrepancy, and Miss Durand's warning. On it. I pulled the typewriter closer. The keys clacked like footsteps in a dark hallway. Wolfe leaned back, eyes half shut. We stand in peril, Archie. The killer feeds on reputation as well as life. Then let's make sure he chokes. He didn't answer. The faint scent of coffee filled the office as the clock chimed 10, marking the hour when conversation ends and strategy begins. By 9 the next morning, West 35th Street looked like a breadline for gossip. A half-dozen reporters loitered across the curb, their hats tilted, their pencils eager, and their morality checked at the corner. The Gazette headline screamed across the city, Chef's Recipe for Murder, and the subhead had Wolfe's name wedged between consulted and controversy. When I stepped out to the stoop for the mail, cameras clicked like crickets on caffeine. I smiled for the flash. Pure mischief. If they wanted a villain's grin, I'd give them the deluxe model. Back inside, I dumped the papers on Wolfe's desk. He didn't look up from his morning beer, which, given the circumstances, he treated as medicinal. I see the city's taking an interest, I said. He muttered, Phooey. That's civic engagement, boss. You're practically trending. Archie, he said with the patience of a saint on probation, trending is not a word. Then call it what it is. Infamy with footnotes. He closed the Gazette with a snap sharp enough to flinch a cat. This article's author, Mr. Cohen, has performed his profession. However, the phrase chef's recipe for murder is vulgar. It implies complicity. It implies readers, I said. And judging by the mob outside, he's got plenty. At that moment, Fritz appeared at the doorway, looking like a ghost who'd been asked to cater his own funeral. Sir, the telephone rings without cease. Journalists, callers, the New York Culinary Review. I cannot. Silence them, Wolfe said curtly. Tell them Mr. Wolfe does not conduct interviews with jackals. Fritz hesitated. Sir, they ask if I poisoned... Enough, Wolfe snapped, and the tremor in Fritz's voice hit him like acid. His tone softened.